lately, since the invent of this generative AI, the large language transformer model. So I'm actually wondering if you could explore these areas to see how
Okay.
they could help speed up what you are doing.
Transformer
And
model, right?
yes, so take a look at some long short-term memory, LSTM, then also study transformer large language models. See how these architectures could really help you. It will really, in fact, it will speed up your work. And I believe you have access to GPUs in your
Of course we do.
lab. Good. So
Mm.
it will really, really like, and it will even help you. For example, you could write scripts that can when you deploy them in real time, they can help to be tracking. Okay, let me just tell you a bit about the research we are going into. We'll be going into. We just finished writing, hoping the grants will go through, and if it goes through, I think it's going to be a nice research. So we discovered lately that paper mills is quite a problem, especially places like China, Iran, and some of these Asian countries. There is this high rate of paper mills. Now, when we talk about paper mills, we're simply talking about those people that it's like an industry that fabricates data set, or they use data set, but they sell authorship. And also they create this system where you just come, they could give you the research topic, they will do the whole research for you, they will help you to do the publication, they will submit it to the authors and everything, to the publishers, and then at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, the person gets a full paper. Now, it's very common even in Africa. So many people, if you could remember, you see that they don't want to go through that rigor to do the research and all that. So those guys, it's like a multi-million dollar industry where they are cashing out big time, because there are people that are, for instance, they are working class people, so they don't
Mm-hmm.
have that time to say they want to do research. So they just come and they do those things for them. So what those guys that are on the other end, those paper mill guys, they target data set that are open source and also
Mm-hmm.
very cheaply available. So they could easily use API calls, extract this data set, and then they do the analysis straightforward, and then that person gets his paper published. Now, in as much as it sounds nice, but they are watering down scientific process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in areas like medicine and healthcare sciences, like public health and all those things, most of these decisions are taken and they affect human lives. Now, you could imagine these guys are going into areas such as genetics, and also in areas of pharmacy. That's those guys in drug production and all that. And because data sets have been made open via the open science platforms and processes, so these guys could easily get data sets. And then when they get this data set, they will dish out these chunks of this analysis, and somehow they boycott and escape publishers and get their paper published. Now, this thing has been going on. People have been raising alarm lately, but now the process become much more dangerous recently with the advent of generative AI. So with the advent of generative AI like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and even the DeepSeek from China lately, these guys now have to give this whole thing to the machine to do it for them. And then subtly, the machine is helping them to be able to evict detection. So many people could not just detect what they are doing now, because now the AI will help them to, polish the whole process to look so real. But yet, when you look deep into it, you'll see that it is not real. So how do you now be able to spot these inconsistencies? How do you be able to trace these things? So what we wanted to do simply was to attack the problem from two sources. So the first sources we wanted to do to attack the problem is to look at what are those public available data sets that are out there and easily manipulated by these paper mills guys. That's when we mean public here, we're talking about healthcare data set, like public health and biomedical data set. So what are those data sets? Can we be able to get a sort of a list of this data set? Can we create a sort of a database or sort of a repo for these data sets? And then we could assess the level of reach. How many of these data sets are AI ready and also are the reach to these guys that they could easily manipulate them? Then by the time we do that, we will see how we could bring in publishers. We also bring in other academicians to raise that awareness that, look, these data sets are prone to be used by paper mills. And we have evidence because we already did a literature search and we've seen how this data set has been exploited lately, especially from the time that this AI, generative AI started springing up. You'll see in the curve, and I don't know if I have the figure, I could have actually shown you guys. Hopefully I could be able to detect it. You will see there is this high curve of these things. Let me see, hopefully I'll get it to show you guys. So what we wanted to do was, if we identify this kind of data set, we will now be able to bring in people, and then at the end of the day, we could be able to say, look, we have seen this issue, and can we be able to all together begin to act as some sort of detective to police the system, to build this? We're not saying we can be able to eradicate the whole thing completely, but we can minimize it by creating that awareness so that the owners of this data set can begin to put on some measures so that anyone cannot just come up and download this data set and use them for malicious purposes. Then how we want to do that, because the data set are going to be very large. So it may be very, very difficult for us to be able to, for example, detect the whole of the data set. So we hope to use large language model itself. That's the same AI that they are using to exploit. Okay, I think I did have, maybe I could share my screen just to show you guys. Good. So I don't know if you guys can see my screen.
Yes, it's showing.
Good. So you can actually see from 2022, can you see where the curve was increasing? But you could see there is a very big jump from 2022 onward. You can see. And the same thing when we look at this enhanced PubMed search on this enhanced data set, you also see the same trend from 2022. You see that it's totally went up. So you could see this is a very big problem. It shows that the AI is helping them to be able to evit detection. So what we wanted to do is to be able to help to raise that awareness. So by the time we raise the awareness, we were not going to stop there. Next, we want to look at these papers or this manuscript that these guys have produced via these data sets that are open or prompt to be manipulated. So when we look at this data set, what we are going to be focusing on basically to detect them is the statistical inconsistency. For example, when most of them, they normally like to look at data set on probably diseases that are quite familiar, like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and all that. Then, secondly, there are some sort of comparisons that you want to do. For example, if you're trying to compare the treatment group with the control group, normally as a statistician, you are supposed to carry out some statistical tests to check if there is going to be statistical significance. But whenever you are looking at two or more groups, definitely they will be prone to certain errors. So you are supposed to carry out multiple corrections for those things. So most of these guys, they don't do that. They will just do the comparisons and tell you that this is the p-value, ignoring those tests that they're supposed to do. So they will violate the assumptions because they don't care. They just want to make their money. So at the end of the day, they don't produce anything and pass it to you. So we need to draw the attention of the publishers to begin to spot some of these subtle inconsistencies that they do. And then definitely it will be difficult for you to tell people not to use generative AI because it's a trend. Everybody is going into it, and most people that don't use it in few years' time, they would certainly lose relevance. However, people need to validate the information that they are getting from these platforms. For example, although it's very minimal now, ChatGPT hallucinates a lot, but it's really have gone down. But at the initial stage where they churn out those stuff, if you use ChatGPT, you will notice that it gives you references or citations that are not true. So the moment you go back and check it, and I'll give you an example of a case that of a judge in the US where the whole case was prepared with ChatGPT. He cited or in court most times they build their cases on previous or similar cases. So these guys went and used ChatGPT to do the whole thing. Even went ahead winning the case, but then at the end of the day, discovered that the whole citations and cases that he used were fake. They don't exist. So that's one of the multiple cases. I also remember there are students that were using it to produce their thesis that I've seen. So the moment you tell them, they just go and feed this whole thing to ChatGPT, and then they get out and without doing anything. So we are not saying you cannot use these things, but you should use them responsibly. You wish to assist you to be able to know the problem we are having is the thinking process. And I was listening to one of the reports on a few days back and the discussion between some of the godfathers of AI. And they said one of the problems that we are falling into a trap by these AI industries in Silicon Valley. And the trap in a sense that this thing is taking away our thinking process, it's taking that critical thinking away from us. And if you understand one of the things that makes humans interesting species is that critical thinking aspect of humans. Now, we are surrendering this critical thinking completely to AI. And this is not a good thing because we have been fighting governments of countries, we have been fighting organizations on issues around control, mind control, and all that. But now here are subtle algorithms that have been developed that are entering into our minds and they are changing us without even knowing. For example, if you notice things like Facebook that uses even YouTube and all these platforms that uses this AI, you will see that most of the things you watch are based on the things you have watched before. So your recommendations will be based on what you are watching. So somehow the algorithm is configuring you and you don't even know that it is working on you. Now, with the additions of people to the mobile and internet world, we are surrendering our freedom gradually to this machine. And that's not a good thing. So we need to be very, very careful. So what we are saying in our research that we're proposing is we're not saying people shouldn't use these things, but they have to know that validate the results you are getting from these processes, subject them to critical thinking. Don't just get those things and churn it out. Get them and churn it out. For me, for example, the advent of ChatGPT and all these platforms have helped me a lot in debugging my code. So there are times before now I have to use things like Stackflow and other platforms to search for some things. But now I could easily just copy that part of where the error comes from and then tell the ChatGPT, I need to understand why this error is coming, how and what is the cause of it, and how do I able to quickly fix it. So maybe the errors that's supposed to take me maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, I fixed it within a couple of seconds. And then I moved into another thing. So it saves me that time. But that does not mean I should give in all my writing codes ability to the machine to do it for me. No, but rather we could coexist and it will make our work much easier. So the human-centric AI at the end of the day is very, very important because that's will really, really help people. Now, coming back to the area you are working on this malware, for example, um, the machines are becoming smarter. And that's why I was making that suggestion to you that you should think considering using large language models because the machines are becoming smarter, and that means that this virus, malwares, and all those things also these hackers are also becoming very, very smart. Like the paper mill guys that I told you about. You can imagine this thing has been going on for a long while. But with this generative AI, it makes them even much more powerful and complicated to detect. Now, you could imagine in areas like gene editing, somebody take maybe a whole genome of a particular species or even a human species and feeds it to a machine, and then at the end of the day, come up with something that is not true, medically is not correct. That person will begin to cause a lot of chaos, if not a problem. If you could lay your hand on, maybe if you have time, you could lay your hand on a book called Weapon of Mass Destruction that's written on all this AI stuff and how those things, if you don't put them on or to subjection and proper check, if you don't create a system of sort of transparency and also some sort of policing of the system, you will end up these technologies fall into the hands of wrong people and they will begin to use them for the wrong reason. And you could imagine this malware research you're doing. Imagine when these things falls into the hand of hackers that know how to play around with these technologies. They will develop these systems that, like, okay, I watched some videos recently of one man that fall victim to some of these hackers that play around with this stuff. What they did to the man was that he said one day he got a call that he was working on his system and he noticed the system suddenly started shutting down, and having issues. So he was concerned, and then he now called. So he got a call. So when he got a call, he picked the call and he was like, and then the person now told him he's working with what's the name of this antivirus, very popular antivirus company. I'm trying to remember the name.
Is it?
It's very, very popular. A lot of systems have it.
Norton?
Sorry? Yeah,
Capacity?
I think Norton also. I think it should be Norton. So he got a call and the person told him he is from this industry. They can help him to fix what's happening to his system. So they were like, he was happy, and then they told him that, okay, what they are going to do, they are going to send him something to download or stuff like that on his system. The moment he downloads it, then they will be able to have access to clean up the system and all that. So he do that, and truly they helped him to fix the system. It was no longer going off. But what he didn't know was that they hacked into every file in his system. So what those guys do is that they try to gain access to your system, and so that on that documentary, he said that sometimes they send you via email. The moment you click the email, you discover that it shut down your system, and then they will call you and tell you and say they want to help you to fix the system. And then the moment they fix that system for you, they take all the relevant information from your system. So they did that to that guy. And then at the end of the day, he said he noticed they started withdrawing money from his account. So he called his bank. His bank told him they didn't notice anything. They didn't see anything. So he was very relaxed. But before he knew, they continued the withdrawal. He keep getting this debit alert. So that was how he felt so uncomfortable. And then he had to call the bank and say, so the bank now blocked his account. But before then, they have already taken, I think, around 25,000 euros or something from his account. Now, you could imagine how they're able to do that such a way that the bank even didn't detect anything wrong. And then he was the only person that was seeing the alert at his own end. The same way they did to the other one I was watching is a hospital. Those hackers went to the hospital and they hacked into the system of the hospital and shut down everything. So the moment they shut down everything, the hospital, a lot of people are going to die because many people that depend on life support, for example, the computer is now controlled by them, and they have shut down all those things. And if you know the hospital, everything is connected together from the ICU units to the decks and everything. They shut down everything. So at the end of the day, how did those guys got in that access? So the other guy said how they were able to get into that hospital was that they put on a very tiny camera, and when they get to sort of a body cam or something, then when they go to the hospital, they talk with the staff of the hospital. He pretended to be a technician that needed to fix something in the hospital and all that. So she was free with him. So later on, he told her that, oh, he wants to just copy a file or something to print, to help him to print. So that was how she trusted him, and then he gave her his flash drive. So immediately she put the flash drive in the system, the other guy at the back end quickly hacked into our system and got all the information he needs. So from there, they were able to hold the hospital to ransom. Then there are other cases where the whole of that city, people's sensitive information was extracted, and then it was uploaded to dark web, where they now started using it for other things. So this is one of the problems we are going to be seeing. The cybersecurity space will be overwhelmed because so many cases like this will start springing up. There is lots of misinformation that is happening. Of the deep fake and all that is coming proud before these things. Now it's even on another level. So we need to step up that security area, putting up some of these checks to really help us to be able to identify what is true, what is not true, what is real, what is fake. So there is so much that someone needs to do in this area. And this threat is not just confined to one domain, it's every domain, all the domains is confined to that. The last time I saw it was some of the banks were hacked, and a lot of money was taken from their coffer. So there is this complex world out there that is going on. And the internet web, it's really, really a very complex area. So we need to find a way to stay ahead of these guys. Instead of to be one step behind, we should always try to go ahead of them so we can mitigate them from, carrying out their evil vices. So try to think of how you can integrate large language model in your research. I think it will really, really help to uh, speed up your work and also to give you more insight to some sort of dynamic stuff that you could integrate to make your structures much more powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I will sit on it.
Yeah, Kruslat, how are you?
Doctor,
Yeah,
it's
how are
quite
you?
a time.
Yes. So what are you working on? What's your research on?
Yes, I'm actually working on it's more of an econometrics issue.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So are you
I've
developing a model or something?
yes, I'm actually working. I've already worked on one model like that. I was not developing to say it, but
Hmm.
using an already developed model
Oh, okay.
to investigate some
Hmm.
uncertainties in the economic aspects in the economic fields
Oh, great.
using
Great.
data on GDP. I mean, data on GDP, inflation, and
Hmm.
I think 5 variables like that I've worked with.
Oh, great. Wow.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
that is just actually what I'm working. But that is just for studying sake. Once you're out of that
Hmm.
space, you have a lot of things to work on.
Yes, yes. I think for me, if I could, I still many people in the statistic realm that I came across, I said that I think that statistic is quite an interesting area, but the problem is probably a lot of time we need statistic mathematics as a foundational knowledge. But
Yeah,
when we are looking at the real world, the complexity is quite much. And then secondly, there is the big data explosions. So we now live in a world of information. And then the information, like Monday was saying, it's more dynamic. It's moving very fast. It's not a static stuff. And statistics seems to enjoy historical data set in order to predict the future. So there is this fast-paced moving world that if you look at it critically, you cannot be able to capture these uncertainties per se using this present modeling approaches that we're using in statistics. I'm going to give you an example. Um, for example, as the data grew very large, you discover, and of course you're a statistician, so you should know about the law of large number, the central limit
definitely.
theorem. Yeah. So you will
Mm.
discover that the statistics always have this assumption of normality, which I'm not really comfortable with it. Even when I was doing statistics, I tried to belong to the school of the Bayesians, where we always want the data to speak for itself.
Yeah.
So I discovered that the frequencies approach always wants to confine the data set to this normality thing. But as the data grew larger, it's not true. There is a big deviation from these normality assumptions. So instead of us to imprison ourselves, it's going to sound funny, but it seems the statisticians they imprison themselves, in thinking everything has to be simple, which is not true. The real world is just full of so many complexity. So that flexibility was one of the issues I used to have with statistics because statistics want us to think in a very particular way, but the world is it moved beyond that realm. So now, if you are a statistician, what really I used to encourage them is to go to look outwardly, maybe towards areas like machine learning. You could also look towards areas like statistical learning. So the statistical learning blend machine learning, unsupervised learning, and also some sort of statistics together. So that makes sense a lot. So you don't just operate in this one way approach that everything has to be in the one realm. Then secondly, if you are a statistician, you should pick a domain. Pick a domain where you want to focus your research on. Where do you want to be helping out? Do you want to be in the industry? Do you want to be in the academic sector? Do you want to be in the health sector, in the agricultural sector? You need to create a niche. So there you can now be able to now look at how you can be able to help solve the problems there. Because one of the issues we are really having in statistics is that, or not just statistics, I think the Nigerian curriculum is, we, especially probably you just was peculiar kind of probably, because I noticed we don't really train the student early to focus on one area. We just want them to graduate BSc statistics, BSc computer science, BSc mathematics. But we're supposed to have, that student from that 300 level, we're supposed to have developed their interest in a particular area, so that by the time they are graduating in statistics, they know that they are going out as statisticians to solve a problem in a particular domain. So this whole system of not creating expertise in a particular thing, I think is wrong. And then secondly, um, the another issue that I also see in Nigeria is that the issue with data sets are not available. Most of the time, you have to go through lots of bureaucratic process to get data. We don't really have this, and then the data set that are available, how true is this data to a large extent? We do hear lots of rumors about people sitting in one room and creating this, filling out survey and all that. So the authenticity of the data set itself, I think it's called for questioning. So I think we need a lot of reform in this area. So I really believed, I don't know if you want to stay in academics, but if you happen to stay in academics, my humble request is for you guys to stress on some of these changes. I've lost contact with so many of these professors, but the ones I do talk with in Nigeria, I think I do make that emphasis that we need to look inward about this area. How do we give it a new look? Instead of I think I also discussed this with Monday last time, that I told him that how do we produce lots of research, and then at the end of the day, students don't do any viable thing? It's just like you're producing it for defense. You defend and then you dump it. You defend but you dump it. I think it's wrong. We need to teach students to produce something they can, at the end of the day, they can fall back to it. And that's one of the major aims of this class, because I really want you guys to develop that real skill that you can be able to produce something. You can turn a machine learning model to an app, for example, and then you could see it. These are products. These are things you could see, instead of just solving them on paper. You could have something like the last conference I went in London in that was, which of the institutes I went. These things are escaping me. When I went there, I presented a paper at that conference. So after the paper, the people that came to see to look at my poster, they most of them were asking me that, okay, we like what you're doing, we really like your work. It's really nice, it's great. But tell us, do you have like sort of an app where clinicians can, when a patient comes, they could put in all this information and then it could help them to see the trajectory of the patient. And then I told them, oh yeah, we're working on that. And truly, we're working on it by that time. But that tells me that people want this kind of end product from your research, something beyond the document, something they can fall back to. I don't know if you get my point. The real world, the end users. So any research you're doing, I also discussed that with John, I think yesterday, where I was telling him of the research he's doing, that I want the end product of his research to be like an app. And the reason I was stressing on that is because you should have something that you could tangibly hold on to at the end of your research. Like you could say, this thing, I produce it. It is the summary of all the intellectual knowledge I gathered for the period of time I was doing that particular study. Although not all research has to end having something, but I think it makes sense if we can begin to, if your research is on influencing policies, you should make sure you follow it to the latter to see how these policies are being used in the society. So beyond just the academic drama, we should have this physical, tangible thing that we could hold on to at the end of the day. And I think it's very, very possible. It's just for us to begin to think about in form of what are my inputs, what are my outputs. I think the moment we begin to think that way, we can be able to think of how do I now turn this output to maybe product? How do I turn it to services? I think it's very, very, it makes a lot of sense if we begin to think that way. Like there was a particular I was listening to the most famous person on AI. I think she's a Nigerian-born American. She's a Nigerian girl, but she was born in US. But I think she made the most famous person in artificial intelligence. So when I was listening to her interview, I was writing notes, of course, because I like listening to those kind of bright minds to sharpen my own mind. And one of the things she was talking about is how she sat in panels in Nigeria and also across West Africa to be able to influence policies that has to do with AI in the region. And she talked about she looked forward to see how AI could influence industries like agriculture, like healthcare, power generation, and all that in Africa, in Nigeria. So when I listened to her, I was quite impressed, and I was talking to myself that truly AI is really helping people in this part of the world. I wonder why we cannot begin to think of how to harness this knowledge in areas in Nigeria. For example, when I